Hello, and welcome to the segment on the authoritarian personality. I'm not a political psychologist, so everything you're about to hear comes from my reading. I'll attach a bibliography and sources so that you don't think I'm just making things up. So these videos are meant to be viewed in order, but if you go out of order, the go in order police will not come knocking at your door, so no worries. Okay, so political psychologists tell us that about a third of the population has what they call an authoritarian disposition. That 1/3 number is important and appears across cultures. So for example, Nazis came to power with 33% of the vote. Le Pen won 35% of the vote in France. Authoritarians exist on both edges of the political spectrum, but I'll focus on right-wing authoritarianism because it has distinct features and it's the danger we're facing right now. So political psychologists started studying the authoritarian personality after World War II to try to understand the rise of fascism in Europe in the 30s. The authoritarian personality describes the followers, the rows of people dressed alike, raising their hands in salute, not the demagogic leader. I'll talk about that separately. So the authoritarian personality is marked by deference to established authorities. Traits of the authoritarian personality include rigidity and cynicism. It's also been called an anti-democratic personality. Those with an authoritarian disposition are averse to complexity. In the words of one political psychologist, they prefer sameness and uniformity and have cognitive limitations. They are, to use her phrase, simple-minded avoiders of complexity. Now remember, diversity is a form of complexity. Now, when they're not riled, those with authoritarian personalities can be good citizens. They'll embrace institutions. They'll follow rules. They'll support traditional values when those values are endorsed by an authority figure. When they are riled, they can become cruel and tolerate cruelty in others. They can show aggression toward outgroups when authorities sanction that aggression. What riles them is what psychologists call a normative threat, which is something that threatens sameness and order. If you want a normative threat, watch some of those Fox News programs. Trump governed by creating normative threats. He talked about invaders and criminals coming over the southern border to take what belongs to real Americans and upset the order. Or authoritarians want order, and this often manifests itself in a hierarchy. So for example, Americans in the 19th and part of the 20th century lived in a particular kind of hierarchy, which feminists call a patriarchy. It was a well-ordered society with white men at the top and black women at the bottom. Authoritarians are very comfortable in this ordered society. Slavery was authoritarian. Jim Crow was authoritarian. Certain evangelical churches are very authoritarian, with a rigid culture and a strict patriarchy. Now, conspiracy theories appeal to people who are averse to complexity. Globalism gets complicated. Our federal government has grown complicated. People who are afraid of complexity are eager and able to see evil in it. Now, a conspiracy theory is a belief that some covert but influential evil group or organization is responsible for circumstances. These can seem complicated, but in fact, they reduce complicated situations down to a simple explanation that fits the worldview that enemies are attacking us from within. So, for example, how Trump lost the election may not make sense to somebody who supported him and someone who everyone they know supported him. So it's easier to believe that the election was stolen. So I talked about the zigzag view of American history. I still have my chart, my diagram. Though political psychologists Karen Stenner and John Haidt talk about what they call an authoritarian dynamic, which is another way of talking about this zigzag. So the authoritarian dynamic works like this. Democracy naturally expands. People who are not included want to be included. And progressives, people who are not afraid of diversity, want to include them. For example, as voting rights expand, the electorate becomes more diverse. As the electorate becomes more diverse, society becomes more complex. It then becomes easier for a demagogic leader to create a normative threat and rile those with authoritarian dispositions. So this authoritarian dynamic creates this ever-present dynamic in democracies because certain people want to expand the democracy, progressives want to keep pushing that slope upward. Meanwhile, a certain segment of the population, those with an anti-democratic personality, will never be completely comfortable in a representative democracy. They will naturally push back against the growing diversity. This is why in the last video, I said that coming to the brink of a true representative democracy will unleash a powerful reaction in those with anti-democratic dispositions. Okay, next, I'll talk about the leaders, which brings us to fascism. I hope you'll join me. Thank you.